You're right on time for the summit. It is the summit o'clock, and of course we want to say a big thank you for making the time, for joining us right here on this episode of this particular talk show. We scale the heights every Wednesday from 9 p.m. to try and just make sense of some of the major events that happen within Rwanda and across the region, just for us to be able to get to understand them even much better. As always, my name is Eugene Anangwe. Listen, tonight on the program we are counting down just 26 days to the July 15 vote, and of course that is under a month to go. And of course it is very important and imperative for us to bring you to speed on what's happening across the preparation spaces and all you need to know about this particular vote, and that is what we'll be discussing tonight on this particular program. Remember, you can always be part of the show. All you need to do is join us across our social media platforms, and if you're on the X platform, the hashtag to use, if you have any question, comments, feedback, reactions to what is going to be said on this particular platform tonight, please feel free to join us by adding the hashtag #TheSummitRW. We'll be following that hashtag to be able to read and sample your feedback in the course of the program. Look, we are also on YouTube and we are live, but not on the Rwanda TV YouTube channel. If you've been looking for us and not finding us right there, of course right now we are still on our sister platform, that is Radio Rwanda YouTube channel. Please just jump in there and be able to follow this conversation, and of course we'll be reading your feedback or your comments and views coming out of the chat box right there, so feel free to jump in there. If you are ready, I am ready, and of course let me bring on board our guest in studio who is going to be able to break down for us the preparations for the elections that we just spoke about right here. He's none other than Charles Munyaneza, the Executive Secretary, National Electoral Commission. Thank you so much, Wani Charles, for making time.
Thank you much.
It's been 8 years.
Very happy to be back here.
Yeah, good to see you.
Be with you. Thank you very much.
I was just saying earlier on, this relationship of ours, we need to improve it a bit.
Yes.
We only see each other when it is this season.
It shouldn't be coming even after 5 years.
No. We need to do something, right?
Yeah.
But karibu sana for, and thank you for making the time. And of course, I'm very much aware and not blind to the fact that it's a very busy season for you and the team at the Electoral Commission. Just bring us to speed, paint for us a picture of what is actually happening within the corridors. Very, very busy, I know. And I know also tomorrow there'll be a press conference to just bring the country to speed on what is happening in terms of the preparation. Just share with us some of the milestones that have already been achieved as we speak today.
Thank you very much. As you've just said, we are 26 days away to the D-Day. And when we talk of the D-Day, we are mainly talking about 15th of July.
Yes.
Though, of course, as you know, we've got elections on 14th for the Rwandan community abroad. And then on 16th of July, we've got another round of election for specific groups that elect women, youth, and people with disabilities. But mainly when we are talking about preparations, we are looking at 15th of July, because this is a day we shall have general elections. So I would say that we're almost done. We're almost done with all the preparations. For instance, we already have all the legal instruments in place. The constitution was amended to accommodate having the two elections being held on the same day. We had the organic law being amended to accommodate a number of things that needed to be accommodated.
Right.
We've also come out with the National Electoral Commission regulations, which mainly details the electoral process and processes, the modalities. That has also been published, and everybody now has access to it.
Yeah.
We already have all the necessary resources in terms of finance. We thank the government of Rwanda to have decided that all the budget needed, all the resources needed for the National Electoral Commission, to manage the National Electoral Commission, should come from the National Treasury.
And this is happening 100%?
100%, right. Absolutely 100%. And we are very comfortable with that. We also have started, and we continue with the process of voter civic education, public awareness on elections, to make sure that everybody goes to the polls knowing why he's going there, knowing how he's going to cast his vote. Of course, the when is now already known. And we want everybody to understand that this is a very important electoral activity.
That they have to participate in.
They have to participate. And we have been very, very elaborate in that to make sure that everybody is on board.
Right.
Using different Maybe we shall come back
We'll come back to that. And of course, we'll talk about that, especially to the processes of the civic and voter education processes. But let's talk a bit about what is going to be different in this election. And you actually alluded to it in terms of it being now a general election. Before, the dates were different for the different voting.
Every election is different.
It's different and unique in its own way. Let's specifically look at the changes in the electoral law.
Yes.
Especially looking at the rationale behind these changes and how they are expected to improve the electoral process. What would you report back to the citizen?
Yeah, as I said, we, for the whole of last year, were in the process of looking at different electoral instruments, the constitution, the articles that are related to elections. We had the organic law, the regulations, but mainly it was to do with how we are going to have presidential and parliamentary elections being held simultaneously on the same day. And that meant looking at different articles in the constitution, in the electoral law, the regulations, especially on looking at how people are going to be casting their votes, which materials they are going to be using, especially when it comes to these materials that we use in the polling stations. How are we going to be using the ballot box? How are we going to be using the ballot papers? For instance, we are going to be using right now 2 different ballot boxes, 2 different ballot papers. We are going to have different polling booths. And the procedure has changed, and the law had to cater for that. And we also had to look at the period within which we are organizing this election, taking into account that we've got 2 general elections which were previously being done different days.
Correct.
So having them on the same day meant many things had to be looked at, many things had to be fixed in the law, but also in the way how elections are generally managed. So we look at different changes, and that's why we have intensified civic and voter education, public awareness, to make sure that our people understand the electoral law, understand the regulations. And when we talk about the people, we are not talking about the general population alone. We are talking about politicians, political parties, and organizations. We are talking about the media practitioners, we are talking about people in civil society, everybody, so that it is not only NEC participating in elections, but everybody is on board.
Is on board in that sense. I want just, I know it's water under the bridge. You cannot do anything about the law. It's done. But just trying to make sense to that person who probably feels, I'm going to be confused going to the ballot. Last time I knew I'm just going for the presidential vote, or I'm going for the, the MPs. Where now I'm going to be having, like you said, 2 different ballot boxes, 2 different ballot papers. I know in other jurisdictions sometimes it's even 7.
Even more.
And they have to go. You know what you need to do when they're campaigning? They just say do the 6-piece. Just vote for without looking at who you're voting for in that particular sense. How do you plan to make it clearer for that person who probably feels this is going to be a bit confusing for me this time?
We have been trying to make sure that we make these elections less confusing as possible through the regulations that I was talking about. But we have also made sure that when we look at the structure, the makeup of our polling stations, that has also been looked at to make sure that, for instance, when you have entered into a polling station, you know what to do right as you enter. For instance, we used to have 1 ballot box, as I was saying. We used to have 1 ballot paper, as I was saying, 1 polling booth. But now we have had, in fact, we have even had the test, if I can call it. We have held the test, a mock session, to make sure that ourselves know the challenges that may be involved. And from that, we have, 1, increased the number of election volunteers who will be helping people to understand within the polling station. We have made sure that the ballot boxes do not have the same colors. For instance, we are going to have, for the presidential vote, we have got a purely white colored ballot box.
So if you see the white ballot box?
If you see the white ballot box, you know that's for the president. Again, we are going to have a white ballot paper. And if you are given that ballot paper, you know that's for the president. And then we have had the ballot box for the MPs. That one is going to be white and black. So when you look at it, you know that's for parliamentarians. And then you will be given a ballot box, ballot paper that has got a different color. We have also had put in place different polling booths, separate from one another. And we've, as I was saying, we put in place, we increased the number of volunteers to make sure that some of them are, in fact, one of them, previously we used to have 4 within a polling station. But now we shall be having 5. And the 5th volunteer specifically will be looking at those people coming to vote and provide guidance and assistance as and when it will be possible and necessary.
Right, and so the idea is to reduce the number of spoiled votes and the confusion as much as possible.
To reduce spoiled votes.
Right. You alluded to the fact that every election is different and unique in its own way. Apart from this uniqueness, what else is unique in this vote?
First of all, these are different. It's 5 years. In fact, the last time we had such a general election was in 2018. And this is how many years? 5 years. 5 years is a long period of time. For instance, we are talking of very many new voters coming to cast their votes. Close to 1.9 million new voters. When you look at the people who voted in 2018 and the people we have on our provisional voter list, you see close to 1.9 million voters. And that means a lot. These people are very anxious. These people, they can't wait casting their vote. And it is also a challenge to us to make sure that these new voters understand why are they voting, how are they voting, and how are they going to conduct themselves, and how can they be assisted in terms of understanding the manifestos of political parties, the candidates, to make sure that they make an informed choice. So that's one peculiarity of this election. Secondly, we see many candidates now coming up. If we compare the candidates we had in 2018 or 2017, when we had presidential elections, you see the numbers have increased in terms of numbers. People who have submitted their candidatures and those who have been approved to stand, especially for parliamentary elections. The numbers have increased. For instance, if you look at the youth, you know that in parliament we've got 2 members of parliament
representing the young people, the youth.
Yes, 2. But now, when you look at the numbers, the candidates that we have announced, 33 people competing for 2 seats. Then people with disabilities, we have 1 coming from people with disabilities, but we have approved 13 people will be competing for 1 post. We've got 24 women being elected to fulfill or to make sure that at least we have 30% of women in parliament. 24 being elected from different provinces. But we've got 199 candidates
who wanted
the 24 seats. So you look at that competition. But that also is also within the political parties. For instance, we have got 6 political parties vying for the 53 seats in parliament. You know that we have got 80 seats in parliament.
Correct.
But 53 are competed for by political parties, organizations, and individuals. So this large number of candidates that we have this time around means that the political competition is also high. And if the political competition is high, it means a lot for election managers like ourselves to make sure that we put in place a fair and free playing field to make sure that everybody benefits and everybody is treated equally, and whoever wins the vote wins it genuinely and
fairly.
That's very important as far as the Electoral Commission is concerned.
Right. We'll come to talk a bit about the criteria for this, vetting process and in that sense. But one other peculiar aspect is the fact that out of 27 that submitted their candidature as independent, who wanted to vie for, as independents, only 1 got cleared. That's also something that maybe you could be able to explain to us. What do you read from this trend, much as you read the trend of the large numbers, but also on this particular clarity or clearance of only 1 out of 27? It's a bit interesting.
It's interesting. But before we look at one who was qualified to stand out of the 27, I think we should appreciate, we should thank Rwandans that they even had that will. They even had that, inspiration also to come and submit their candidatures. That is also a very good sign in a democratic environment. So having many people vying for these seats, either you qualify or you don't qualify, that is also a very good sign that we are progressing. Now, coming to the issue of having one out of the 27 aspiring independent candidates qualifying, of course, after the electoral process, after the election, we shall have an in-depth, kind of evaluation to understand all these things. But what we have seen as of now, and as we are looking and assessing the files of these people who had submitted their candidatures, many of them, it seemed they were not prepared. They wanted, but the preparedness part of it was not enough. So especially we found that people failed to raise genuine signatures, especially as a requirement. This is a requirement in the law. To stand as independent candidate, you had to have at least 600 people across the country signing for you, and at least 12 people in each district, people who are registered in that district as voters and getting their national identity card in the same district. These numbers are not very big numbers, actually. In a country of 14 million people,
you should be able to raise that.
Failing to raise 600 people, it's not something that somebody can think as a big deal. Or failing to raise, but it seemed many people were not prepared for this. Many people did not understand what it meant. And when we looked at these risks, we really found that people, the way they did it, for some of these people, it was not a serious exercise. And that's why we shall be commending through our civic and voter education, and maybe explaining more after the elections to make sure that people go there understanding the challenge that is there. What is required there. But mainly it was these risks that proved to be a challenge for these people who did not plan adequately, despite the fact that we had, provided enough time. As contrary to what it was in past elections, these people used to start getting signatures on the same day that we started receiving candidatures.
When are they supposed to do that?
Yes, but this time they started almost a month, in fact a month, before submitting their candidatures. And we did this deliberately looking at what had happened in the past elections. So on our part, we thought we had done enough, and we thought we would get many people qualifying, but unfortunately...
Maybe your enough was not enough.
Maybe it was not enough. Enough is relative, but we thought it was enough compared to what was done in previous elections.
The other seat is the hotly contested, or the presidential seat, the top seat itself. We are seeing a repeat in terms of the candidates who've been cleared for this particular position, and that has been received with different or mixed reactions, especially going by those who actually applied or wanted to put themselves up for this, and this in many cases we've seen Rwanda attacked, especially as a country when it comes to democracy, because as a particular person was not qualified to be able to be given a chance to run for this particular situation. I mean, talk to us or demystify. What are the things that people who say this do not understand really, especially when it comes to people like Diana Rwigara, who actually was not qualified, among others. When they say, look, again, she's not been given a chance to vie, she's been blocked by the regime, and so it's an unfair process. What is it that they don't get?
Well, I don't want to start talking about individuals here, because it was not that Diane she wasn't the only candidate that was disqualified, or did not meet the qualifications to stand as the president of this country. We had a number of others. So, first of all, I wonder why those people you are talking about dwell on yet there were others. Secondly, I also don't understand why they don't talk about those who qualified, because these are also candidates, they are also Rwandese, so they qualified. So why are they not saying that these people also qualified? So those who qualified because they had the necessary requirements. Those who did not qualify didn't qualify because they do not meet the requirements of the law. And as National Electoral Commission, our main focus, our main responsibility is to make sure the electoral law is upheld. So whether this one was qualified or that one did not qualify, that was a matter of the law.
Right.
It was not the will of the National Electoral Commission. What we did was looking at the law, looking at what is required in the law, and make sure that whoever submits the file or the papers meets that. And if they didn't, then you would advise them to try next time.
Right.
Yes.
It's been 30 years, especially when we look at since the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis, the country has made tremendous progress in various sectors, and this is very evident in what we see here in this country. And we still seem to have those who still try to pour cold water on the country, especially when it comes to the aspect of democracy. I want to understand from your perspective, those who argue and say, there's no election here. We already know what will happen. We know who will win. So this is just a formality. As a commission that works so hard, like you said, you're busy working on this, working on that. When you hear people say this, what does that make you feel?
We just think that those people are not, first of all, they don't understand our history. You've just mentioned about the genocide against the Tutsi. 30 years are not a very long time in such environment. By the way, we started having these kinds of elections in 2003. It was not in 1994. So when people talk about democracy and think that what we call democracy here has got the same characteristics as the same democracy we are talking about in a different country, I think these people are misled. Because democracy fits in a society. Yeah. Democracy fits in a society that has got a history. Democracy fits or should be defined in terms of a people, in terms of what people want, in terms of what people have gone through, and in terms of where people want to go. So for Rwanda, and for us here in Rwanda, we made this choice a long time ago. To make sure that our democracy has got similarities to our past, is relevant to our past, but is also relevant to where we want to go as a community, as a society, and as a country. So it is not surprising that how we manage elections is different from how people in the West do it, because we are not the same people. These are different countries with different histories, different circumstances. So for Rwandans, I think but also in the National Electoral Commission, we are proud that we are on the right path. And we are not distracted by people who are saying that there are no elections there. I think the people of Rwanda know better. And these are the people who are going to cast their votes.
Interesting. Now, let's talk a bit about the rules of the game. I'm sure that in the coming weeks, now the whistle will be blown, and officially the candidates or the cleared candidates will be on the road, on the campaign trail. Now, I wanted us to just get some perspective of what happens next in this particular case, and also to get some clarity on what we've been able to see so far. In many situations, we've been told or we've heard that campaigns start only on the official period when the campaign is supposed to start and end during that specific period. However, there are people who probably are already mentioning who they have already decided to choose, where they want to vote. Just for clarity purposes, are they breaking this law, or they're within their space and their right to do so?
Let me just remind the people that our electoral campaign starts on Saturday, 22nd of June. And it ends on 13th of July. That's the campaign period that we have set as the Electoral Commission in our regulation. But it's also stated in the law that period that shouldn't be below 20 days. So we expect, and we already see political parties, candidates preparing for that, because they have already submitted their electoral calendars to us. Indicating where they are going, on which dates. We should also be thanking them because they are abiding by the law. So whether people have now, some people have started now saying, I can't wait for these elections, I can't wait for 15th or 14th so that I go and vote for so and so. this is not only for Rwanda. It doesn't only happen in Rwanda. We hear of opinion polls in many other countries where people, even the media, the intellectuals and professional organizations, even start projecting and even announcing, by the way, start announcing that with the way you look at it, so and so is going to win.
Likely to win.
Like, for instance, I don't want to mention one big country that has got elections sometime later this year. You see the trend, you see what people are saying. So I don't think it is a crime for Rwandans to say that come 15th of July, I'm going to
vote for so-and-so.
I prefer this. But what would be wrong is to hold campaign rallies, to come here and start saying that, okay, I'm campaigning for this candidate before 22nd of June. But otherwise, on the streets, if you met people saying that, I think they've got that right.
They're within their right to do that.
Yes.
Very good that you clarify that. Because I've seen and witnessed elections in different countries, including within the region, and we've seen how it is always an election period in those countries. From the moment you cast your ballot, the winner is announced, they get on the road to campaign for the next election, that is in the next 5 years. And in Rwanda, it's unique. And I want you to just share with us, I mean, from perspective of the beauty of this in terms of a clear set campaign period, and once campaigns are done, everybody is back to work and working on what they need to be able to deliver. Talk to us a bit about how this is something that should be related or something that works for Rwanda.
That's one of the things that differentiates Rwanda from other countries, many other countries. Of course, I've also met some people, some foreigners, sometime I think last week or the other week. I met one of them, and that person was saying, "Oh, there is no sign that there will be elections in the next 1 month." Then I asked that gentleman, well, what do you want to see? And he cited some of the incidences that are seen in some of our sister countries, especially in Africa, where when it comes to elections, you find people start fighting on the streets, running on the streets, throwing stones at each other, abusing each other. You find people turning, brothers and sisters turning against each other simply because they belong to different political parties. So that's not the case of Rwanda. Rwanda has got many other things to do. It's not only about elections. We can't spend 5 years campaigning. We would be making a very big mistake, because there are very, very many other things that we should be doing. We lost a lot of time as a country in our history. So we want to recover it. And recovering it, we can't recover that time running up and down on the streets for 5 years. Of course, I know it happens in some other countries, but for us, there is a period for elections, and there is also a period for other things to be done. So that's why we've got that period for campaigns, we've got polling days, and after elections, we go back to our work and prepare for the next elections, but not, showing that, campaigning the whole day. That's not what have chosen as a country.
Like, it is true that after the campaign period, if my car had been branded whichever campaign or party, I need to get it off.
It's a requirement. I told you that these campaigns are supposed to be ending on 13th, or 13th of July. And we've got elections on 15th. In the diaspora, it is 14th. So we've got a day before the elections. There are no campaigns taking place, including removing those campaign materials. It's about not distracting people. It's about telling people, okay, you've had almost 3 weeks campaigning, you are tired, go back and rest, then the next day come for election and cast your vote.
Interesting. I want to invite our viewers, if you're watching us right now, you have a question, specific one, to the Rwanda Electoral Commission, the National Electoral Commission of Rwanda. Please feel free to share with us through different platforms. And I've mentioned earlier on, you can use their hashtag, the Summit RW, on the X platform. We'll be happy to read your feedback. If you're on our YouTube channel, that is the Radio Rwanda YouTube channel, feel free to leave a comment right there. I'll quickly read it. And if you want to tweet me directly at Eugene Anangwe. I'll be able to read your feedback in the course of this program. In the meantime, Mheshimiwa, I want us to talk a bit about the aspect of the voter education and awareness, because like you said, there's a lot that has happened, and we need to be able to ensure that everybody is on board in that particular sense. And I want to understand, what are we going to be expecting to see that is different this time round in terms of the civic education aspect? In other jurisdictions, this is also time for media houses to eat the campaign and election money in terms of advertisements, public service announcements. What should we expect this time around?
It's not about expecting, but we are already very far in terms of civic engagement, in terms of voter education, in terms of voter information, in terms of public awareness. We've got a very detailed electoral civic education program. And what we have done is to make sure that we don't do this alone. We've brought many people on board, both in the preparation, but also in the delivery of the messages that we want to deliver. For instance, we've put in place structures that are very close to the population. We've got what we call electoral civic education coordination committees, both at district level, sector level, and cell level. It is a committee of about 11 people, and these 11 people are not from the Electoral Commission. These are, of course, we've got people from the Electoral Commission, we've got people from local government, we've got people in the civil society, religious organizations, we've got the private sector, women, youth, people with disabilities, to make sure that there is that coordination at that level. And whoever is on that committee is responsible to make an outreach, to reach at the people, he or she, the category of people that person belongs to. That has worked well. Secondly, we've worked with local government especially, and we thank the Ministry of Local Government and the districts and the provinces for the support they are giving us. For instance, you've been in Rwanda, you know what we do, you know what we call in Yabaturage. Every week we meet at our district, at our cell levels, as a population, to discuss a number of things. And we have used this forum as the Electoral Commission to discuss with the people, educate them. Every week we've been doing that. At the end of every month, we have what we call Umuganda. You also know that. And we have been using this fora to make sure that the people understand what we are doing. We have engaged the media.
Sorry, how do you ensure that these are not turned into campaign platforms? There's a thin line. Sometimes it's easier to be turned into campaign.
This is what I explained from the beginning. Everybody knows. As Rwandans, we know what Umuganda is and its purpose. We know what the Inteko y'Abaturage is and what it is meant for. And everybody knows that it can't be used for campaign purposes. And that's what makes our situation better to understand. We have developed that political culture, we have developed that awareness and understanding that there is time for campaigning for everybody, starting from our politicians, because mainly it is politicians in many other countries that some of them even go for burials and they start campaigning and start campaigning on burial ceremonies. Some of them even campaigning in churches, but we can't have these things here in Rwanda. So there is time, and everybody knows that. So I was saying that we have brought almost everybody on board. We've brought the media on board, not cashing in money. But I will also thank our media houses. They have been inviting us, just as you have done, to come and talk to the people of Rwanda free of charge. I know that one is not very common in many other countries. I've been to a few countries and I've seen that. We are using social media platforms. We know that we've got young voters, and we know that reaching them, we have to use the language they understand.
And go to places
and to go to places.
Are you going to TikTok?
We've got a very big team now. Of the National Electoral Commission, but also being supported. As I said, it is not about the Electoral Commission alone. We are getting support from others, especially from other government institutions. So we've got a very big team working on the social media part of it, working on how messages are developed, how they are disseminated, depending on the category, depending on the target. So we have got some kind of defining the people and the message we wanted the people to receive, and in what form.
Right.
And we have seen a lot of progress, especially we have seen this during our voter registration process.
Yeah.
You know, we've just concluded that process of updating our voters register. Just the other day we announced the provisional list. So we used social media to reach the people, especially the code that we are using for people to check whether they are registered or to transfer themselves from one person, one place to another. We saw that was very effective, and we are still using it. In fact, in the coming 2 weeks, we are going to make sure that we are very aggressive in terms of reaching the people, in terms of making sure that even that person who has not known that we have got elections and now are going to cast the vote is going to have it using different fora. Right. Right now we are working with women groups, we are working with youth groups across the country, we are working with almost everybody. The other day we met religious leaders, a very big group of bishops, pastors from different religious denominations, and they are already helping us.
So if your pastor is not telling you anything about the election from a civic education perspective, they did not get the memo right.
In fact, we requested them, and they are already doing it.
Right.
In each service, either Sunday or Saturday or Friday, you take 1 minute and remind the people that we've got elections on 15th, and they are doing that.
Right.
We met civil society organizations, they are doing that. We are meeting local leaders, we are meeting security personnel, because they are also voters. We are meeting them. So I think as we move forward in the remaining few days, we shall make sure that almost everybody has been covered in terms of public awareness, and we do expect a very high voter turnout, as it has always been. By the way, in Rwanda, I don't know of any elections where we have had less than 95% of voter turnout. And we do expect even more, because we've got very many young voters and they're very anxious to cast their votes. And
it's very interesting,
very confident with that.
because you say this, and I'm thinking of spaces or places where there's registration of voter apathy. There is a lot of complaints around my name is missing on the voter register, and you know, a lot of push and pull, and I think you've alluded to how Rwanda is doing this in terms of the collective responsibility that is being done in that sense. I want to move this conversation forward and talk a bit about the aspect of technology in the electoral process. I've seen different countries try to adapt, pull in technology here, pull in technology there. Is there any way that there'll be a use of any technology in either the voting process? Do we expect biometrics? Do we expect, sending the information to the tallying centers? Just bring us to speed on how technology is going to play a role or not in this election. It's
already playing a role, but it's playing what I would call a measured role.
Why measured?
It's measured because technology is technology, and the technology has got to move with what the law says, but the level at which you are prepared to use it. One of the mistakes that we in Africa have made is rushing, is moving ahead of time, including unnecessary or untimely technology in election management. And we have ended up having these things fail, especially on polling days. And when technology fails, then you have failed the people. So I was saying, for us who have already employed technology, for instance, as I talk now, I was referring to the voter register. Originally, we used to have paper on which we register the people, just booklets or kind of registers. But right now, our voter register is biometric, and it is linked to the National Identification Agency database. You know that in Rwanda, you get your national identity card when you are 16 years.
Yes.
But you vote when you are 18 years. So what we do, and that's part of the technology that we have developed, when you reach 18 years, the system, our system, the National Electoral Commission voter registry system, communicates to the National Identification Agency system.
Yes.
So what happens, the moment you attain 18 years, you are automatically transferred to a voters register. You don't need to come to the National Electoral Commission to register when you attain 18 years.
What if I don't want to participate in this democratic process?
You should, and that's what we are supposed to do as the National Electoral Commission,
Yeah.
to show you the usefulness of participating. Because nobody should be left behind. And that's what we do in civic education.
Yeah.
But if you don't want, then it's your right.
You can come and say, strike me off the register.
No, no, because it is a civic
Exercise.
response. Yes, yeah. It's like saying that I don't want to have a national identity card. You should have it. So, but if you don't want to cast your vote, it's your right.
Can stay home.
In Rwanda, there is no law that forces people to cast their votes. But we educate people that it is their civic responsibility to participate in the governance of this country. And one way of participating in the governance of this country is casting your vote. And that's very, 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 very important.
Right.
So, I was saying measured technology.
Yes.
We're in the process. In fact, we have developed a number of modules which are going to be deployed or already being deployed in the electoral process as I talk. One I've talked about, the voter registration. The code that we used, for instance, in the people registering. We have developed a system that election volunteers, managing election volunteers, recruitment, training them, management, deploying them. We are using technology. We have developed some piece of technology that election observers are using, both local and international observers. They are applying and being accredited online. Maybe we shall come to that.
Yes.
We are developing a technology where we shall in future be using it to manage candidate profiles. Who has submitted online submission of candidatures, verification of candidatures. I think the next electoral process, electoral cycle, we shall not be using a lot of papers. And maybe some of the challenges people have been facing may be reduced.
Yeah.
And when it comes to, I know people have been talking about electronic voting, and that's where people always think that's the technology. When they talk of election technology, people think
I want to be able to...
the electronic voting is the only piece of technology that is used in elections. Yeah, that's why I said we are going slowly, learning from what others are doing, learning from the mistakes others are doing elsewhere. Because we know that even in these so-called developed countries, we have seen cases where some have accused the other of cheating using this technology. This technology. So we are putting in place technology in terms of tabulation of our results, consolidation of our results, transmission of results from our polling stations through the district to the national level, and the display of these results at national level. That's what we are going to. That's what people are going to see.
And so this is tried and tested. Yes, there'll be no results are fuye. Network is down.
Of course, with technology, you can't be sure 100, but there are always backups. There are always backups. There are always plan Bs, and we've got all those plans in place, and we are still testing, by the way. So we are doing that, but we are not doing what we call electronic voting. We shall come back. We shall come to that later when we have put in place, for instance, the infrastructure needed. You are talking about Vyapfuye. You are talking about internet coverage. You are talking about infrastructure. You are talking about electricity.
Even the skill sets.
Even the skills. We are using over 100,000 election volunteers who will be managing these elections. These people needed to be trained to understand this. So as we move forward, we might come to that. But when I talked about measured the use of the technology in elections, this is what I meant. We are going step by step to make sure that what we are doing is in line with the law, but what we have done does not bring make people of Rwanda not satisfied with what we are doing simply because we are rushing to using this kind of technology that we have.
Right. For the last almost 1 hour, we've talked. You've painted a very rosy picture in terms of the processes, the steps that have been taken. But what's your biggest challenge? As we speak today, what's giving you sleepless nights? And how can we help?
I wouldn't say we spend a lot of sleepless nights in a
Everything
week.
is new.
No. Of course, as I was saying, every election has got a challenge. It's a human activity, and each and every human activity certainly has got challenges and setbacks. But what's necessary is for you to put in place mitigating factors.
Right. What's that one challenge?
One, I talked about very many new voters coming up. We have got a challenge of educating them. We've got a challenge of them understanding that it is their civic duty to cast their vote. It's not easy reaching out to close to 2 million people who are going to cast their votes. Secondly, we are in era of what can I say? This managing this kind of media we see around, managing the YouTubers and all those people, even if people claim to be journalists who may not be journalists. These are some of the things that we are looking at. We are working with others, looking at. So that's also a challenge because these are different times.
Yeah.
In 2017, we did not have all these
YouTube channels
and all those. Yet they also have got a right to do what they are doing, but they've got the right to do it within the boundaries of the law, and it is our responsibility to educate them.
Right.
So that's also a challenge. Secondly, we are going to have 2 elections on the same day for the first time in the history of this country, at least after the genocide against the Tutsi. Managing 2 elections, not only about people casting their votes, but also counting the votes, making sure that the results are out as possible to reduce the anxiety among the people. So these are some of the challenges that we are looking at, but we are putting also in place mechanisms and mitigating factors to make sure that we try as much as possible
to mitigate them.
Yes.
Right. On the X platform, I have Vincent Kayumba JR at @VKayumba_JR. He says, Executive Secretary Charles is well-informed man, and I have learnt a lot about the upcoming elections. I see organization, and it seems everyone is aligned. This is good feedback, I think, in that particular sense, in that particular space. And I wanted just to move this conversation again and be able to probably also read a comment from Cyrus. I see at Cyrus Ngusi says, voting is much an emotional act as it is an intellectual one. For Rwanda, we have a chance to vote wisely to what we have seen. Continuity and stability is upon us. And of course, thank you so much for that feedback. You can be able to continue talking to us across these particular platforms. But Charles, before I let you go, I just wanted us to be a bit forward-looking in this sense, in terms of looking at, the election day. What should we know? Those within the diaspora, and of course, those who will be voting back here at home. Just real quick, what are the key things that they must take down in terms of taking note today about that?
One, people should make sure that they are registered as voters, because you can't vote if you are not registered.
How do I check?
You can check by *169. In French, they call it H. What did this? Urwego.
Yes.
If you use that, using whatever gadget or your telephone you have, you can always check yourself.
Right.
Know that you are registered here, and you know that your voter status, you can transfer yourself. That's very important. 2, we are urging people, both in Rwanda but also outside, to have identification papers.
Right.
In Rwanda, you should have a national identity card. If you cannot have a national identity card, you have got another document that legally replaces that, which you can use for election. Outside Rwanda, you can also have a national identity card, and we thank the people outside Rwanda. By the way, we are going to have a very big number of Rwandans casting their votes in the diaspora. In 2017, we had slightly more than 22,000. But right now, we are talking about 62,000 already registered to vote, meaning they have multiplied almost 3 times.
Yeah.
So these people, in order to cast their votes, they need to have either identity cards or passports or whatever they need to register themselves. That's also important. 2, that's for the Electoral Commission staff, and we are in the business now of managing a lot of logistics, and everybody involved, we thank everybody who is supporting that in terms of transportation, in terms of security and others. Then lastly, on the D-Days, 14th in the diaspora, we request people to turn up in large numbers, just as they have been doing. Elections start at 7 a.m. in the morning. We do expect Rwandans to come and cast their votes. Then you go and do their normal business.
Right.
By the way, on election day, business does not stop. What we ask people, wake up in the morning, get your national identity card, you go to your polling station, cast your ballot, then you go back.
Don't stay there to guard the vote.
If you want, you can stay there.
Yeah.
But if you've got some other things to do, please go and do on your own things.
Yeah.
Then make sure that you are peaceful. Make sure that you don't cause any problem at the polling station, as usual, because Rwandan elections have always been peaceful.
Right.
We've not had any incidents, and we do expect also to have the same election process.
Right.
But we need to remind the people that these things are not, they don't come by accident.
Right.
It is us, Electoral Commission, voters, candidates, and others that make sure that the electoral process is as smooth. So we are calling upon everybody to make sure that come 15th or 14th or 16th of July, Rwandans are happy casting their votes, and they're also happy after the electoral process ends.
I know we've not been able to have time to talk about the post-election process, but because of time, I just want to ask you this last question. I'm not trying to make you a prophet, but I'll just ask you, if you closed your eyes and just looked probably in the next electioneering processes, maybe 2-3 next elections, where do you see Rwanda's electoral process being? What comes to your mind?
It will have grown. You know, the electoral, even when we talk about democracy also grows. And it grows with the people, it grows with a certain community. So I see management of elections also improving. The technology that you are talking about, I see it improving. I see people understanding much better the electoral process, understanding why they are casting their votes. So I see it growing, the process growing, improving, just as a country shall also have grown. So a country cannot grow economically in many areas, then you leave behind the electoral process. It has to go with the country, it has to go with the population, it has to go with the community, and I see a lot of progress coming up. Looking back at where we have been and looking at where we are, that's why I think and I hope and I believe come the next 5 years, 10 years, we are going to see much better things being done because we are focused towards that.
Right. Interesting. That's all the time we had. I always say it's the shortest 1 hour, and it flies so fast, but thank you so much. And that's our guest tonight on the summit, is none other than the Executive Secretary of the National Electoral Commission of Rwanda, Charles Munyaneza. Just bring us to speed on the preparations ahead of the July vote. And of course, the conversation does not end on these 4 walls. It continues also across our digital platforms. Please keep in touch. I want to say thank you to Akanyana, and of course we also have Kamikaze and Jocelyn and the rest of the teams that have been watching and being part of this conversation silently from whatever spaces that you're in. We'll keep talking. Of course, we're hoping next Wednesday we'll start talking to the cleared candidates, trying to understand what do they have in store for all of us as far as this particular vote is concerned. Stay with us. We'll see you next time. Same place, same time. As always, my name is Eugene Anangwe. Goodbye for now.
Thank you, I like that.
Asante sana.